Hi, third graders. Welcome back to another Read Aloud Day. Last week we started reading our chapter book Wonder. We left off when Augie was going to visit his future school, and he had just met some of the kids and they were showing him around. So we're going to start off today when they are going to look at the Performance Center. The Performance Space. Charlotte basically didn't stop talking as we headed down to the second floor. She was describing the play they had put on last year, which was Oliver. She played Oliver even though she's a girl. As she said this, she pushed open the double doors to a huge auditorium. At the other end of the room was a stage. Charlotte started skipping towards the stage. Julian ran after her and then turned around halfway down the aisle. "Come on," he said loudly, waving for me to follow him, which I did. There were like hundreds of people in the audience that night, and Charlotte, and it took me a second to realize she was still talking about Oliver. I was so nervous. I had so many lines, and I had all these songs to sing. It was so hard. Although she was talking to me, she didn't really look at me much. On opening night, my parents were all the way in the back of the auditorium, like where Jack is right now, but when the lights are off, you can't really see that far back. So I was like, where are my parents? Where are my parents? And then Mr. Resnick, our theater arts teacher last year, he said, "Charlotte, stop being such a diva." And I was like, okay. And then I spotted my parents and I was totally fine. I didn't forget a single line. While she was talking, I noticed Julian staring at me out of the corner of his eye. This is something I see people do a lot with me. They think I don't know that they're staring, but I can tell from the way their heads are tilted. I turned around to see where Jack had gone to. He had stayed in the back of the auditorium like he was bored. "We put on a play every year," said Charlotte. "I don't think he's going to want to be in the school play, Charlotte," said Julian sarcastically. "You can be in the play without actually being in the play," Charlotte answered, looking at me. "You can do the lighting, you can paint the backdrops." "Oh yeah, whoopee," said Julian, twirling his finger in the air. "But you don't have to take the theater arts elective if you don't want to," Charlotte said, shrugging. "There's dance or chorus or band. There's leadership." "Only dorks take leadership," Julian interrupted. "Julian, you're being so obnoxious," said Charlotte, which made Julian laugh. "I'm taking the science elective," I said. "Cool," said Charlotte. Julian looked directly at me. "The science elective is supposedly the hardest elective of all," he said. "No offense, but if you've never ever been in a school before, why do you think you're suddenly going to be smart enough to take the science elective? I mean, have you ever even studied science before? Like real science, not like the kind you do in kits." "Yeah," I nodded. "He was homeschooled," Julian said, Charlotte. "So teachers came to his house?" asked Julian, looking puzzled. "No, his mother taught him," answered Charlotte. "Is she a teacher?" Julian said. "Is your mother a teacher?" Charlotte asked me. "No," I said. "So she's not a real teacher," said Julian, as if that proved his point. "That's what I mean. How can someone who's not a real teacher actually teach you science?" "I'm sure you'll do fine," said Charlotte, looking at me. "Let's just go to the library now," Jack called out, sounding really bored. "Why's your hair so long?" Julian said to me. He sounded like he was annoyed. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged. "Can I ask you a question?" he said. I shrugged again. "Didn't you just ask me a question? What's the deal with your face? I mean, were you in a fire or something?" "Julian, that's so rude," said Charlotte. "I'm not being rude," said Julian. "I'm just asking a question. Mr. Tushman said we could ask questions if we wanted to." "Not rude questions like that," said Charlotte. "Besides, he was born like that." "That's what Mr. Tushman said. You just weren't listening." "I was so listening," said Julian. "I just thought maybe he was in a fire too." "Geez, Julian," said Jack, "just shut up." "You shut up," Julian yelled back. "Come on, August," said Jack. "Let's just go to the library already." I walked toward Jack and followed him out of the auditorium. He held the double doors open for me, and as I passed by, he looked at me right in the face, kind of daring to look back at him, which I did. Then I actually smiled. I don't know, sometimes when I have the feeling like I'm almost crying, it can turn into an almost laughing feeling. And that must have been the feeling I was having then, because I smiled almost like I was going to giggle. The thing is, because of the way my face is, people don't know me very well. They don't always get that I'm smiling. My mouth doesn't go up at the corners the way other people's mouths do. It just goes straight across my face. But somehow Jack Will got that I had smiled at him, and he smiled back. Julian's a jerk, he whispered before Julian and Charlotte reached us. But dude, you're gonna have to talk. He said this seriously, like he was trying to help me. I nodded as Julian and Charlotte caught up to us. We were all quiet for a second, all of us just kind of nodding, looking at the floor. Then I looked up at Julian. The word supposedly, by the way, I said. What are you talking about? You said supposedly before, I said. I did not. Yeah, you did, Charlotte nodded. You said the science elective is supposedly really hard. I heard you. I absolutely did not, he insisted. Whatever, said Jack. Let's just go. Yeah, let's just go, agreed Charlotte, following Jack down the stairs to the next floor. I started to follow her, but then Julian cut right in front of me, which actually made me stumble backward. Oops, sorry about that, said Julian, but I could tell from the way he looked at me that he wasn't sorry at all. The deal. Mom and Mr. Tushman were talking when we got back to the office. Mrs. Garcia was the first to see us come back, and she started smiling her shiny smile as we walked in. So, August, what did you think? Did you like what you saw? She asked. Yeah, I nodded, looking over at Mom. Julian, Jack, and Charlotte were standing by the door, not sure where to go or if they were still needed. I wondered what else they'd been told about me before they'd met me. Did you see the baby chick? Mom asked me. As I shook my head, Julian said, Are you talking about the baby chicks in science? Those got donated to a farm at the end of the school year every year. Oh, said Mom, disappointed. But they hatch new ones every year in science, Julian added, so August will be able to see them again in the spring. Oh, good, Mom said, eyeing me. They were so cute, August. I wish she wouldn't talk to me like I was a baby in front of other people. So, August, said Mr. Tushman, did these guys show you around enough, or do you want to see some more? I realized I forgot to ask them to show you the gym. We did anyway, Mr. Tushman, said Julian. Excellent, said Mr. Tushman. And I told about the school play and some of the electives, said Charlotte. Oh no, she said suddenly. We forgot to show him the art room. That's okay, said Mr. Tushman, but we can show it to him now, Charlotte offered. Don't we have to pick Abaya up soon? I said to Mom. That was our signal for my telling Mom if I really wanted to leave or not. Oh, you're right, said Mom, getting up. I could tell she was pretending to check the time on her watch. I'm sorry, everybody, I lost track of the time. We have to go pick up my daughter at her new school. She's taking an unofficial tour today. This part wasn't a lie, that Via was checking out her new school today. That part wasn't a lie that we were picking her up at the school, which we weren't. She was coming home with Dad later. Where did she go to school? Asked Mr. Tushman, getting up. She's starting Faulkner High School this fall. Wow, that's not an easy school to get into. Good for her. Thank you, said Mom, nodding. It'll be a bit of a schlep, though. The A train down to the 86th, then to the crosstown bus all the way to the east side. Takes an hour that way, but it's just a 15-minute drive. It'll be worth it. I know a couple of kids who got into Faulkner and love it, said Mr. Tushman. We really should go, Mom, I said, tugging at her pocketbook. We said goodbye kind of quickly after that. I think Mr. Tushman was a little surprised that we were leaving so suddenly, and then I wondered if he would blame Jack and Charlotte, even though it was really only Julian who made me kind of feel bad. Everyone was really nice, I made sure to tell Mr. Tushman before we left. I look forward to having you as a student, said Mr. Tushman, patting my back. Bye, I said to Charlotte, Jack, and Julian, but I didn't look at them or look up at all until I left the building. Home. As soon as we walked at least half a block from the school, Mom said, So, how'd it go? Did you like it? Not yet, Mom. When we get home, I said. The moment we got inside the house, I ran to my room and threw myself onto the bed. I could tell Mom didn't know what was up, and I guess I really didn't either. I felt very sad and a tiny bit happy, and at the exact same time, kind of like that laughing, crying feeling all over again. My dog Daisy followed me into the room, jumped on the bed, and started licking me all over my face. Who's a good girlie? I said in my dad's voice. Who's a good girlie? Is everything okay, sweetness? Mom said. She wanted to sit down beside me, but Daisy was hogging the bed. Excuse me, Daisy. She sat down, nudging Daisy over. Were those kids not nice to you, Augie? Oh, no, I said, only half lying. They were okay. But were they nice? Mr. Tushman went out of his way to tell me that's how sweet kids they are. Uh-huh, I nodded. But I kept looking at Daisy, kissing her on the nose and rubbing her ear until her back leg did that little flea scratch shake. That boy Julian seemed especially nice, Mom said. Oh, no, he was the least nice. I liked Jack, though. He was nice. I thought his name was Jack Will, but it's just Jack. Wait, maybe I'm getting that confused. Which one was the one with the dark hair that was brushed forward? Julian. And he wasn't nice? No, not nice. Oh, she thought about this for a second. Okay, so is he the kind of kid who's one way in front of grown-ups and another way in front of kids? Yeah, I guess. Oh, I hate those, she answered, nodding. He was like, so August, what's the deal with your face? I said, looking at Daisy the whole time. Were you in a fire or something? Mom didn't say anything. When I looked up at her, I could tell she was completely shocked. He didn't say it in a mean way, I said. He was just asking. Mom nodded. But I really like Jack, I said. He was like, shut up, Julian. And Charlotte was like, you're so rude, Julian. Mom nodded again. She pressed her fingers on her forehead like she was pushing back a headache. I'm so sorry, Augie, she said quietly. Her cheeks were bright red. No, it's okay, Mom, really. You don't have to go to school if you don't want to, sweetie. I want to, I said. Augie? Really, Mom, I want to. And I wasn't lying. First day jitters. Okay, so I admit the first day of school I was so nervous that the butterflies in my stomach were more like pigeons flying around my insides. Mom and Dad were probably a little nervous too, but they acted all excited for me, taking pictures of me and Via before we left the house, since it was Via's first day of school too. Up until a few days before, we still weren't sure I would be going to school at all. After my tour of the school, Mom and Dad had reversed sides on whether I should go or not. Mom was now the one saying I shouldn't go, and Dad was saying I should. Dad had told me he was really proud of how I handled myself with Julian, and that I was turning into quite the strong man. And I heard him tell Mom that now he thought she had been right all along. But Mom, I could tell, she wasn't so sure anymore. When Dad told her that he and Via wanted to walk me to school today too, since it was on the way to the subway station, Mom seemed relieved that we would all be going together. And I guess I was too. Even though Beecher Prep is just a few blocks from our house, I've only been on that block a couple of times before. In general, I try to avoid blocks where there's lots of kids roaming around. On our block, everybody knows me and I know everybody. I know every brick and every tree trunk and every crack in the sidewalk. I know how Mrs. Grimaldi, the lady who's always sitting by her window, the old guy who walks up and down the street whistling like a bird. I know the deli on the corner where Mom gets our bagels, and the waitresses at the coffee shop who all call me honey and give me lollipops whenever they see me. I love my neighborhood of North River Heights, which is why it was so strange to be walking down these blocks, feeling like it was all new to me suddenly. Amherst Avenue, a street I'd been down a million times, looked totally different for some reason. Full of people I never saw before, waiting for buses, pushing strollers. We crossed Amsport and turned up Heights Place. Via walked next to me like she usually does, and Mom and Dad were behind us. As soon as we turned the corner, we saw all the kids in front of the school. Hundreds of them talking to each other in little groups, laughing and standing with their parents, who were talking with other parents. I kept my head way down. Everyone's just as nervous as you are, said Via in my ear. Just remember that this is everyone's first day of school, okay? Mr. Tushman was greeting students and parents in front of the school entrance. I have to admit, so far, nothing bad had happened. I didn't catch anyone staring or even noticing me. Only once did I look up to see some girls looking my way and whispering with their hands cupped over their mouths, but they looked away when they saw me notice them. We reached the front entrance. Okay, so this is it, big boy, said Dad, putting his hands on top of my shoulders. Have a great first day. I love you, said Via, giving me a big hug and kiss. You too, I said. I love you, Augie, and Dad hugging me. Bye. Then Mom hugged me, but I could tell that she was about to cry, which would have been totally embarrassing for me, so I just gave her a fast, hard hug, turned, and disappeared into the school. Locks. I went straight to room 301 on the third floor. Now I was glad I'd gone a little tour because I knew exactly where to go and didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing of pretending not to notice. I went inside the classroom, and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while all the kids started sitting at different desks. The desks were in a half circle facing the chalkboard, so I chose the desk in the middle toward the back, which I thought would make it harder for anyone to stare at me. I still kept my head way down, just looking up enough from under my bangs to see everyone's feet. As the desk started to fill up, I did notice that no one sat down next to me. A couple of times someone was about to sit next to me, then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. "Hey, August," it was Charlotte giving me her little wave as she sat down at the desk in front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit up front, I don't know. "Hey," I said, nodding hello. Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her, talking to some other kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting next to me. It was Jack Will. "Jack." "What's up?" he said, nodding at me. "Hey, Jack," I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wished I hadn't done because it kind of felt uncool. "Okay, kids, okay, everybody, settle down," said the teacher, now facing us. She had written her name, Ms. Petosa, on the chalkboard. "Everybody find a seat, please. Come in," she said to a couple of kids who had just walked into the room. "There's a seat there and right there." She hadn't noticed me yet. "Now, the first thing I want everybody to do is stop talking now. And," she noticed me, "put your backpacks down and quiet down." She had only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me. Like I said, I'm used to it by now. "I'm going to take attendance and do the seating chart," she continued, sitting on the edge of her desk. Next to her were 3 neat rows of accordion folders. "When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you a folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule and your combination lock, which you should not try to open until I tell you to. Your locker number is written on the class schedule. Be forewarned that some lockers are not right outside this class, but down the hall. And before anyone even thinks of asking, no, you cannot switch lockers and you cannot switch locks. Then if there's time at the end of the period, we're all going to get to know each other a little bit better. Okay? Okay." She picked up the clipboard on her desk and started reading the names out loud. "Okay, so Julian Albans," she said, looking up. Julian raised his hand and said, "Here," at the same time. "Hi, Julian," she said, making a note of her seating chart. She picked up the very first folder and held it out towards him. "Come pick it up," she said, kinda no nonsense. He got up and took it from her. "Zmenachin?" She handed a folder to each kid as she read off the names. As she went down the list, I noticed that the seat next to me was the only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting at one desk just a few seats away. When she called the name of one of them, a big kid named Henry Joplin, who already looked like a teenager, said, "Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you take that seat, okay?" She handed him his folder and pointed to the desk next to mine. Although I didn't look at him directly, I could tell Henry did not want to move next to me, just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor when he came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped his backpack up really high on the right side of his desk, so it was kind of like a wall between his desk and mine. "Maya Markowitz," Miss Petosa was saying. "Here," said a girl about 4 desks away from me. "Miles Norrie?" "Here," said the kid that had been sitting with Henry Joplin. As he walked back to his desk, I saw him shoot Henry a "poor you" look. "August Pullman," said Miss Petosa. "Here," I said quietly, raising my hand a bit. "Hi, August," she said, smiling at me very nicely when I went to get my folder. I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning into the back. For a few seconds, I stood in front of the class, and everybody looked down when I walked by back to my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing it, because she had specifically told us not to. I was already pretty good at opening locks anyway, because I used them on my bike. Henry kept trying to open his lock, but he couldn't do it. He was getting frustrated and kind of cursing under his breath. Miss Petosa called out the next few names. The last name was Jack Will. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, "Okay, so everybody write your combinations down somewhere safe that you won't forget, okay? But if you do forget, which happens at least 3.2 times per semester, Mrs. Garcia has a list of all the combination numbers. Now go ahead, take your locks out of the folders and spend a couple minutes practicing how to open them. Though I know some of you already went ahead and did that anyway. She was looking at Henry when she said that. And in the meanwhile, I'll tell you guys a little bit something about myself. And then you guys can tell me a little about yourselves and we'll get to know each other. Sounds good? Good. She smiled at everyone, though I felt like she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Mrs. Garcia's smile, but a normal smile, like she meant it. She looked very different from what I thought teachers were going to look like. I guess I thought she'd look like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, an old lady with a big bun on top of her head. But in fact, she looked exactly like Mon Mothma from Star Wars Episode 6. Haircut kind of like a boy's, and a big white shirt kind of like a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry couldn't get his lock open still, and he was getting more and more frustrated every time someone else popped one open. He got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, if he hadn't put the backpack between us, I would most definitely have offered to help him. Around the room. Ms. Petosa told us a little bit about who she was. It was boring stuff about where she originally came from, how she always wanted to teach, and the job she left on Wall Street about 6 years ago to pursue her dream and teach kids. She ended by asking if anyone had any questions, and Julian raised his hand. Yes, she said, to look at the list to remember his name, Julian. That's cool about how you're pursuing your dream, he said. Thank you. You're welcome, he smiled proudly. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Julian? Actually, here's what I want everyone to do. Think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. Actually, wait a minute. How many of you came from Beecher Lower School? About half of the kids raised their hands. Okay, so a few of you already know each other. But the rest of you, I guess you're new to the school, right? Okay. So everyone think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. And if you know some of the other kids, try to think of things they don't already know about you, okay? Okay, so let's start with Julian and we'll go around the room. Julian scrunched up his face and started tapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. Okay, whenever you're ready, Miss Petosa said. Okay, so number 1 is that... Do me a favor and start with your names, okay? Miss Petosa interrupted. It'll help me remember everyone. Oh, okay, so my name is Julian. And the number 1 thing that I like to tell everyone about myself is that I just got Battleground Mystic for my Wii, and it's totally awesome. And the number 2 thing is that we got a ping pong table this summer. Very nice. I love ping pong, said Miss Petosa. Does anyone have questions for him? Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or 1 player? Said the kid named Miles. Not those kinds of questions, guys, said Miss Petosa. Okay, so how about you? She pointed to Charlotte, probably because her desk was the closest to the front. Oh, sure, Charlotte didn't hesitate even for a second, like she knew exactly what she wanted to say. My name is Charlotte, I have 2 sisters, and we just got a new puppy named Sookie in July. We got her from an animal shelter, and she's so cute. That's great, Charlotte, thank you, said Miss Petosa. Okay, then who's next? All right, we are going to stop there for the day. Our next chapter, we're going to read what Augie has to tell the class about himself, and we're going to see how the kids respond. I hope you are enjoying the book so far, and we will continue this book for our next read aloud. Have a great day, guys.